What makes Strix Halo different?
I don't think Strix Halo is going to make its way to handhelds at all. My name is Stephen Turner, and in my day to day, I work with 1X Player for US stateside support and testing their hardware. I'm also a game developer as well. And the reason that I was so interested in talking to you today is because one, I love mobility platforms. So all your SoCs, APUs, low power embedded devices, that's kind of my jam.
Cool.
And I think that besides the leaks and things we've seen recently coming out of other news outlets, there's so much more to these APUs and devices than just like, hey, it's going to be a great low entry gaming device, right? So I'm kind of excited to talk about that. You really explore that possibility today.
Awesome. Yeah, dude. I think Strix Halo, I mean, it's super exciting. It's a game changer, just like I kind of said. But we can get into it today. I think we can first just kind of begin like with what makes Strix Halo different? Like what makes it sets it apart from other APUs, like in your mind? Because I know why in my mind I kind of detailed that in my video, but I kind of want to talk to you because you have a background with handhelds and APUs. What makes Strix Halo in particular so important, or is it
To
not that
me,
important? Sorry.
no, you're good. It's funny you say that because for me, what makes it important really is just the iGPU side of it. Being able to cram that many CUs of I think it's RDNA 3.5
Yes.
inside die space is it's less than 300 millimeters squared, so it's a decent sized die, but it's not that big, right? And it's funny you said handhelds because I actually disagree with a lot of people. I don't think Strix Halo is going to make its way to handhelds at all.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because yes, it's efficient, right? It's you know Zen 5, RDNA 3.5, but the the reticle limit we're hitting that size, it's just not going to work in that small of a form factor, unless it was something like the I won't say Intel, the X1 from 1X Player, which is like a 11-inch gaming tablet. That's
Okay.
the only way I can see the form factor working, right? But yeah, the reason that is the most important to me is just the iGPU side. That's
Yeah.
a low end graphics card with a CPU attached.
Yeah, and I mean, based on the leaks, it's going to have 16 Zen 5 cores. So that's a lot of CPU power too. I think I could see professionals getting their hands on Strix Halo and being pretty excited with that. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, this doesn't seem like a handheld kind of device, right? Because on the low end, it might be using upwards, like at the lowest end, like 50 watts. But I saw leaks all the way up to 170 watts on this bad boy. So that seems like a lot, something that maybe like burn your hands. I don't know. What I what I think Strix Halo is really cool for is like those really small mini PCs that all come compact, and like being able to put that down, bring it with you on trips, put in your backpack, and being the size, maybe not, it couldn't fit in your pocket, but it could definitely fit in your backpack very easily. Like, and having that level of performance, I mean, it'd be probably more than my CPU performance in my main machine here, and that's just crazy. Um, you could get that low performance in such a portable form factor. So that's what I think Strix Halo is really going to excel at, in my mind.
Right. And right. And to piggyback off your point about professionals, right? For my stuff that I would do, I would love Strix Halo, especially for the low end graphics side of testing. Because one thing that people don't pay attention to, especially Unreal Engine development, is that the choices you pick for, your graphics API, all these different settings, they have a tangible effect on power. I don't think we don't think about it a lot because a lot of gaming is done on desktops or gaming laptops, so nothing that we consider. But just to think about it like this, right? It's estimated to be, depending on the configuration and power for Strix Halo, maybe like desktop 3060 performance, right? Depending on how
Yeah.
much you feed it. But it's using, I would say, like what, 80% less power if the APU itself is drawing like maybe 60, 70 something watts. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
3060 desktop performance, about 60, 70 watts. The, the possibilities are limitless in that sense, right? And then I also think about like if that was my main like workstation rig, maybe a mini PC, or ideally a laptop, I would prefer. Because right now, I have I don't know if you can see it, but this is my HP Pavilion 14 Plus,
Okay.
and this has the Ryzen 7 7840U, uh,
Cool.
which is a great CPU. I mean, it reviewed well, but I don't think people really paid attention to how efficient it was.
Yeah.
At 15 watts, I mean, it was smoking the Apple's base M2, which people didn't pay attention to.
Wait, really?
And yes, yes, right.
Smoking Apple.
I would, yeah, just the base M2, like not a tier above that.
Okay.
At 15 watts, right, for sustained workloads.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and
Yeah.
that's 4 nanometer, right? Um, so AMD can do some great things with Strix Halo. I think the problem that we're going to run into is that it's just not going to be in affordable devices. One, I don't think that the many PC vendors, like Minis Form, Geekom, all those guys, I don't think they're going to get stock when we expect it, because everybody's going to want Strix Halo, right? All these different vendors are going to want it. Look at Strix Point right now. What's the only brand that has it? Asus. And they can't make it.
We just
front.
love
They can't make
Asus,
it
right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think you brought up a good point there, because when it comes to the mobile platforms, especially, AMD has really had a problem filling that demand, right? And they don't have a lot of competitors in the x86 space for how efficient they've been, so it makes sense. Everyone wants their products for that mobile space, and it's been really hard to find many of their products like um, just consistently, that sometimes people have to settle for something less, because when you need a laptop, you need a laptop. You can't just wait, right? So you're just gonna have to buy what's available.
And it's funny because they've just caught up on shipping Hawk Point, right, which is the Ryzen 8000 series on mobile.
Yeah.
So my laptop came out in like September 2023. It was one of very few SKUs that you could get a hold of with the new 7000, and they are just now catching up with demand and shipping Hawk Point, right? That's why you're seeing so many like 8845 HS laptops available now. And it's like, well, I mean, it's great that it's there, but one, manufacturers are still pricing it like it's a premium product when it's not. And two, we're still waiting on Strix, and we're just getting last gen now.
Yeah.
So that's always been my issue that I've had with AMD mobility platforms, especially on our side. What I do with one netbook, because I can tell you a story. It's actually funny. So, the first AMD model that they came out with was like the 4800U, and they were struggling to field that from AMD. Like AMD had promised to one netbook a certain amount of minimum order quantity that they were going to buy from them, and like I would say weeks before the Indiegogo campaign, they fell through. And it's proven, because you can go back and look at that campaign. It should still be up, and you'll see that, like, yeah, it was, the delivery date was pushed back. They never said why, but I know that that's why it was pushed back, because AMD promised this amount and couldn't meet it. And that's one of my issues I have with AMD. Like I said, I love the mobility stuff. I love what they're doing with their APUs, but that's an issue to me.
Do you see AMD being able to fix that? Maybe not with Strix Halo, but with their future products. I mean, are they going to be able to secure enough wafers to meet demand? Are they going to be able to secure enough capacity? Or do you think they're just going to keep on pushing their data center products and reserve all their capacity for that?
They're going to have to. They're going to keep on pushing data center, because that's where the money's made.
Yeah.
Money is not made in client, right? That's not where money is made. Like, yes, we saw their Q2 earnings where they did increase market share, which is great. But if you look at revenue by volume, it's all in data center. It's all in enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is. So this is going to continue, I would say, at least for the 5 years. And we have to remember too, right? AMD's a like design company, right? They don't have their own fab. It's all going to TSMC. Everybody wants TSMC. And what I do like about AMD in that regard is that they do play kind of smart with the nodes they choose. So they do design around, like, I don't want to say last generation nodes, but I mean, 4 nanometer at this point is a last generation node, but it's readily available, so they're able to ship it in volume better. Imagine if Strix was built on 3 nanometer, right? We wouldn't see any laptops. Forget Asus with their exclusivity deal. We'd see no laptops, right? So they're struggling to field products on a last gen node. That tells me that, one, demand's really high, and two, they're going to keep playing conservative and playing to where the money's at, which is data center.
I kind of said that I'm thinking it's going to be around 5700 XT performance, like max, and then 1080 performance at the low end, which is like 3060. And it seems like, that's kind of the performance estimates you're thinking as well, right? With that
Yes, that's
level,
what I'm thinking.
yeah. With that level of performance, is Strix Halo going to be competitive, do you think? Do you think that it's going to be enticing for people to get an APU with, 3060 mobile or 3060 desktop performance?
If they can keep it fed right with that memory bandwidth they have, I believe it's 256 bit bus, right?
Yeah, and
If
it's
they can keep it fed,
estimated
then
like 240 gigabytes a second. Memory
oh yeah,
bandwidth.
if they can keep it fed, I think it'll be competitive.
Yeah.
Because you have to consider the alternative on mobile. There's a lot of people that I know that I work with that only deal with mobile platforms, laptops, tablets. That's it,
Mhm.
right? In that space, what do we have? We have, well, now Strix Point, but it's not even out. Really, you only have the 780M, which is still pretty good, but I mean, this is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of that.
Yeah, I think it's
And
like
it's
55% faster than the 890, than like the newest one. It's
right.
gonna, yeah.
No,
So
I've heard this as well. So yes, I do believe it's going to be competitive. I think the thing for people to keep in mind though is that when we talk about performance and efficiency, those are two different concepts.
mhm.
And we both look at benchmarks online from other creators, and everyone's testing for the most part is almost just scattershot and different, right? From how one outlet tests efficiency to another, it's not the same. Generally, you can ballpark it, but it's not the same. For me, when I say efficiency, I'm looking at work done over time with power draw taken into account.
Okay.
So, for example, for me as a game developer, one of my tests would be I would compile lighting in a complex scene, and I would measure, okay, how much power is the SOC drawing versus how long did it take to get done. And I think that's, for me personally, that's one of the better marks for efficiency. And I can see Strix Halo doing that. For example, my laptop here does that same test, 1,000 lights in Unreal Engine 5. It can compile them in about five, 5.5 minutes using 28 watts
Yeah.
um, from the battery, which is pretty good for an 8-core, 16-thread part. Now, just imagine how much more efficient Strix Halo will be than that, right? The estimates we have, at least from Phoenix to that, is over 65% in efficiency, right?
Mhm.
Ballpark it. So what that tells me is that for these kind of workloads, for us that work in this field, I mean, we're actually going to be able to get work done on battery, which is I'm excited about. Not to ramble too much, but
Yeah.
that's always been a thing that I've hated so much is I have to be plugged in to get stuff done
Yeah.
on laptop, right? It's annoying. And yes, I know someone's going to bring up MacBooks, but not for what I do.
Yeah. I mean, you're actually going
Not
to
for
be
what I
able to do some serious hardcore work, some heavy duty applications on battery with
do
Strix
on battery,
Halo.
which is
Yeah,
annoying.
that's what you're saying. And you're a game developer, so that's just exciting, right?
It's very exciting, man. I don't know if where I'm at it's gonna, spring for Strix Halo machines. But I would hope, right? I
Well,
would hope.
something that just came to my mind that we haven't talked about is it being an APU and having that unified memory kind of architecture, right? The However much RAM you have is going to be how much VRAM you can have access to, right? Or I mean, you have more knowledge on this than me. I don't know exactly how Windows partitions VRAM on APUs, but let's say that Strix if it configured your Strix Halo machine or you bought one because it's going to be soldered memory, right? With 32
It's
gigs.
all about it.
Yeah, so it's going to be soldered with 32 gigs of memory. Does that mean technically you could get up to like 30 gigs of VRAM on that APU? I know some is going to be reserved for the OS and whatnot, but
It's yes, not that much, but yes. Usually it's like a 50-50 rule. So you have 32 gigs, use about 16
okay.
for VRAM. I mean, you can go over that, of course, but
So
generally
basically,
you want
if you
50
wanted 32 gigs of VRAM, you'd have to get a 64 gig.
64 gig, right?
And if they ever made such a part for Strix Halo, it would be astronomically highly priced. I'm assuming.
No, and you assume correct, right? I mean, we don't have to be fortune tellers to understand the economics of what's built here, right?
Mhm.
It's on an advanced node. I don't want to say refresh 4 nanometer, but I think it's like 4 NE. The logic is
Okay.
so much more dense in Strix Point. And I don't want to get off to a tangent, but when we talk about like nanometer, right, we're only talking about the densest part of the logic core. We're not talking about the entire chip. And I think you see a lot of people in forums and stuff get that mixed up. It's like, well, this one's 10 nanometer, this one's 4 nanometer. And it's like, well, that's not the actual size. We're talking about the logic portion, where the transistors are, that part of the chip. With that said, it's going to be very expensive.
Mhm.
I just it saddens me because the technology is awesome. I love it. I'm excited about it, but I don't see many like firms going for it. Well, at least in the game dev side, I think
Okay.
like architectural firms would love it. Those who do like a lot of ArcViz. Um, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Virtual production. So, people who run like shows, TV, movies. Strix is going to be great for them.
Really? You think that that's
Yeah,
going to be the really?
yeah. And like I said,
So you think for people
the
that
reason
like to render kind of scenes, they're going to enjoy Strix Halo?
I think they will too, because like I said, you can already render stuff on Phoenix and
Okay.
Strix Point.
I
I
didn't
mean,
know that
it's
RDNA like had the software stack to do something like that very well.
it's not better than NVIDIA, but at least for like on the professional side, like I said, from what I do and that
Mhm.
I've personally used, so I've used UE5 for ArcViz on AMD platforms. Um, it's only I would say it's only like 10% behind NVIDIA in those specific
Yeah,
applications.
I mean, well, it's not
Um,
always about just the speed; it's like compatibility. Because like last time I checked, like there's just certain programs like rendering wise that RDNA will just like not complete. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
um,
Blender is one that people bring up a
yeah, and
lot.
stuff like Revit. I don't even know if like for architectural firms, like you were saying, and AutoCAD. I don't know if like those AMD graphics cards can even compatible with those programs.
I know that Revit works for sure
Okay.
on AMD platforms. I know that for a fact. AutoCAD, it's been a minute. I'll be honest with you, I don't
Okay.
remember or not. I've heard people complain about it, but Revit, yeah, it works on AMD.
Okay.
Um,
That's good, dude. We
and
need
it's
we need more compatibility with programs like that because when people like go to school or when they, get a computer for that professional program and they're told their only options Nvidia, that just or Nvidia, I'm sorry. I say Nvidia. People get mad at that. Nvidia, their product, the prices just get blown out of proportion for those professional cards there. So I'm glad that AMD has that supported.
yeah, blown away out of proportion. Before I changed degrees when I was in college, I was actually going for interior architecture. And like you said, that was one of the recommendations to have a laptop. I think they recommended it was like at least at least 8 cores, and then NVIDIA graphics card, which, like you said, I think is dumb because you don't want one set of professional applications just locked to one vendor.
Yeah.
That is awful for
Yeah.
the future of just the software ecosystem.
Mhm. Well, I think we can move on. So anytime, and that's interesting. You just talked about like for professional applications because anytime I heard about Strix Halo, I thought of it in the sense of gaming. Because in my mind, it's finally, and I kind of detailed this in my video. In my mind, it's finally AMD giving us something similar to the consoles, right? Like an
Yeah,
APU that's actually got those beefed up compute cores, and that can compete with that console level performance. So,
right.
do you think, mainstream gamers, like the mainstream audience, maybe not esports gamers, but people that just want to pick up a game and play it and go, are going to be interested in Strix Halo?
Yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is because this is kind of explain my point. The reason that I'm not too keen on it as a gaming platform is because it's price, right? Gamers are cheap and chintzy. You know, the people that Strix is going to be great for, I highly doubt they're buying laptops over 1,200 bucks USD, right?
Yeah,
You talk about that person, that casual gamer that just wants to pick up and play something, light. Strix, in theory, will be great for that. The performance is there, everything is there except price. Getting these devices down to client is not going to be cheap. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but Moore's Law is Dead did, I don't know if it was a recent leak or something like that. He did say that like pricing for Strix will be, I don't know if like in control, but manageable. Personally, I don't see it for how advanced the chip is itself.
yeah,
And we have to remember, talk about consoles. Yes, Strix is going to be comparable to like what's in the PS5 or whatever, but you don't have like the volume discount. There's
yeah.
hundreds, millions of those SoCs between PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, but how many Strix Halo chips are going to be out there, right?
That's true.
So
They're
the
really just selling those for much less because they're making so much.
right, it's all volume at that point. It's economics, and that's what I'm worried about for Strix Halo. I would love for it to be that. I ideally, this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people. Ideally, if you want Strix Halo to move adoption or to be adopted by a lot, it's got to come in under 1,500. Ideally, around like 1,200.
Well,
But the problem is,
in my mind, like I don't really want to buy a computer without a discrete card if it's over 1,000. Like for my mind, it's got to be under 1,000. I know this like super high performing APU, so maybe like you can make an exception like 1,200, but like I don't know, man. At that point, you can get 4060, 4070 laptops on sale for around 1,000, right? 4060 laptop under 1,000. So if it performs that same level, you know,
that's the thing, right? And it's like you have to ask yourself, is the efficiency going to be worth it?
yeah,
Because battle life is going to be good, right? And for me personally, I'm off gaming laptops. I'm off anything with discrete graphics. Just because where I'm at right now, when I'm out and about, I need that like battery life. I need my laptop to last at least 9 hours,
yeah,
at least 9 hours. And those laptops are great, right? Especially for NVIDIA. Like I make ray tracing scenes. Like I love NVIDIA, but the problem is even with the new Ada series, your laptop is still only lasting like 4 hours if you're actually using it.
hmm
It's rough, and I'm kind of in agreement with you personally. For me, that if I was going to splurge on Strix Halo in a laptop, it would have to be like around 1,000, preferably under.
yeah,
That like you said, no discrete card, and then I don't want to get gouged for the new tech that's inside as well. So there's a lot of factors that's going to go into its gaming performance and adoption. Well, I'm sorry, not gaming performance, but its adoption. And I don't think people that we described earlier are really going to go for Strix,
yeah,
right? It's $1,500, and I no discrete card. I can get a, like you said, 4060 laptop that performs just as good, probably if not better, right?
hmm
Because the bandwidth's going to be more, and that's the big thing. So that's what I'm kind of worried about, if I'm being honest with you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, and we can just go on to like the costs and the marketing of this product, how they're going to market this. For me, like it's an APU, right? So what's the point of an APU? Well, on the manufacturing side, it should be cheaper, right? It should be cheaper
Yes,
than creating a CPU and creating a discrete GPU and then putting those in a product, right? And trying to cool both of those. If you combine those two
right.
things, put the same power delivery in all one package, same cooling, it should be cheaper. So for AMD to come out with a product and price it next to their discrete lineup of mobile products just doesn't make sense, right? So it's got to hit those price targets or it's DOA, in my opinion. And they're just going to have to come out with it. The people that really like the tech will buy it. It's going to sit on store shelves and then go down in price, unless there's just not enough volume, and then it would just sell out. But
I like you hit the nail on the head. Personally, I think it's going to come out. There's not going to be enough volume, right? It's going to be this hot new thing that reviewers are talking about, and those who want it are going to run out and get it. But if it comes out in volume, it's just sitting on shelves, dude.
Yeah.
Because look at Strix Point now. Strix Point should be what's replacing Ryzen 7 8000. Like that sub 1000, maybe $1,200 segment. It's not. You look at Asus's laptops and they're all okay, I lied. One starts at 1,200, but I mean after tax, you're looking at like 1,350, right? They're pricing this like it's a premium product because AMD just commands that premium now in the mobility sector. And if you think that they're charging like what 1,200, 1,300 for Strix Point, what do you think is going to happen when Halo comes out? Right?
Two
People have to
grand,
think about
two
that.
grand minimum.
I think so too. Like people are like $2,000. No,
Yeah.
$2,000. No. Yes.
So do you
Strix
think that's
Halo's going to come out?
Do you think that's the AIB's fault or AMD's fault or a little bit of both? Because I almost think when I see like Asus come out with their big laptop with all the RGB and the lights and all that, like they doomed it to be that expensive, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but I I think what AMD should do or should have done is that these chips they should have sold not at cost, but their margins. I promise you, if we can look at their financials and see what the BOM cost is, and maybe Moore's Law's Dead will leak this, I promise you, it's like 30%, maybe more margins on Strix series, right? Personally, I think if they really want to be aggressive and drive adoption, you come down to like 20% margins, right? That's still a healthy profit in tech for a cutting edge node. 20% margins,
yeah,
after everything's said and done, that's still good.
You're talking to a public company here, and when they lower margins, investors do not like that. You can't lower your margins, and then you'll have to report that. And they're like, oh, where's your company going? Why are you lowering margins? You have to come out with an excuse, right? We saw this with Intel. They used to have 50, 60% margins back in their heyday. They've lowered them all the way down to, I think, to like the low 30s, maybe even high 20s. Yeah. And investors, as you can see, their stock just do not like that. That's one of their main things is margin. So I can see why we need a silicon company that's not publicly traded, like that designs our chips. Imagine that. They're just like, oh, we're going to give people a good deal this year, and we don't have to report to investors.
That would be amazing.
I'm sure they would have some sort of investors, but yeah.
I mean, you could have like, angel investors and crap like that, but at least there's no, I think they're called retail investors, those who, like us who, go on.
Yeah, like retail investors is just your average Joe that wants to go trade on Robinhood, basically. Okay. Like you don't own a firm or anything. You just got a little bit of cash and wanted to go buy some. Okay. So our last point before I kind of ask you, or no, we have a couple more. Well, I guess we already talked about the portability and form factor, but I just want to know a little bit more your thoughts. Like, do you think this is just only going to be in like the bigger laptops and then the mini PCs, basically the portability of that? You said it's not going to be in handhelds.
I don't believe it'll be handhelds, but I do think it'll be in larger tablets, and I do think it'll be in like 14-inch laptops.
What's the point of it being on a tablet?
So have you seen like the Minisform V3?
No, is that a tablet?
Yeah, so it's like an x86 tablet.
So do you it's like a screen you can plug in your mouse and keyboard, kind of?
Yeah, a screen you plug in your mouse and keyboard, kind of like a little Surface Folio keyboard you can type on.
Okay.
They're pretty cool, honestly. Like I know a guy, not that one, but he has an x86 tablet that he uses at work. I mean, plugs into other people's machines to do what he has to do, which is, I think it's cool. There's utility there. And a lot of people, I mean, why would you want to drop a couple hundred on something like, a Samsung Tab 8 or an iPad if you want to stay in the x86 ecosystem? So there's room for it, and they're getting pretty good right now, I would say. Okay. I go back to the X1, and in that one, there's an 8840U version and an Intel 155H. The 155H is the one that I do like a lot of the testing on. And from what I've seen, I mean, you can let it run up to 50 something watts, and even in the hands, it's still pretty cool. So cooling solutions are getting really robust, and if that's something you want to do, I think it's great. Um,
I don't
I personally
know.
use it. I haven't.
I'm
Go ahead. I'm
thinking
sorry.
I'm thinking for like tablets, that's like going to be a niche. Like the people that buy tablets aren't going to care if their product's x86 or ARM. They just want to buy something that can get them through the day and it's cheap. That's just my experience with people buying tablets. Unless they're buying an iPad and they want it to be like, the Apple ecosystem, people don't really care about tablets as much. Am I
They
wrong?
don't. No, you're not. No, you're not wrong. I bring up the example because the Minis Form V3 sold very well, which I was surprised about initially. So it tells me that at least in that niche, people who support these companies, that is a viable form factor. And something like that, maybe 12 inches with Strix Halo with an Oculink port, you you know what? Tablet's a bad word. Don't think of it as a tablet. Think of it as just a compute puck, essentially.
Okay.
This is my compute
Kind of like an
device.
all-in-one
I bring
computer.
all in one computer, right? I bring it
Okay.
from here to here. I set up my docking station. I plug in my Oculink cable, and now I have a screaming fast desktop setup.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I guess the last thing we could talk about here is the future outlook of APUs. Like in my video, I said Strix Halo, the beginning of the end for discrete GPUs, right? And that was just the first thing that popped in my head when I thought of an APU that is that efficient. And I've always thought this, right? If we can get an APU that gives us all the performance we need out of our product, we don't need any more performance. Why not go for more efficiency and just consolidate that, right? Why do we need a discrete GPU when our APU gives us all the performance we need? So my question to you is, do you think eventually we'll be buying computers with just APU and discrete graphics cards will only be for servers and data centers and AI farms and whatnot?
I th- I think eventually we could get to a point like that because let's think about it. We're already halfway there. When you talk about a mobile platform, what's the limiting factor? It's not CPU anymore, right?
Yeah.
My 15-watt laptop here with those 8 Zen 4 cores is not CPU bound in any scenario at all. It's just the graphics portion. So once the graphics portion gets to a point where it's really not worth it to get a gaming laptop, I think you're gonna see a bit of a shift in that
Mhm.
regard. Like you said, now GPUs always gonna be in data center, like those farms for AI and crap like that. Yeah, but for client, I think that we're slowly but surely getting to that point. Even if you
Okay.
look at the leaks for Lunar Lake coming up, that's gonna be a very compelling iGPU.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you
You
about
know,
Lunar Lake in a second, but okay, just this question, like
go ahead.
desktop, am I going to be buying a desktop to replace my discrete GPU and it's just going to have an APU in the future, like 10, 20 years from now? When I buy a new gaming PC, it's just going to be an APU all in one and it's going to run my games for me. It's still going to be
No,
PC. No, you don't ever think that's going to happen? Because this is my
you said
thoughts.
like
Like, eventually, we're going to reach the limits of how far we can shrink this silicon, right? And
yeah,
there's going to
right.
be other levers we're going to have to pull. And one of those is going to be just latency, right? So the CPU has to talk to the RAM, the DRAM, then the DRAM, it has to go back to CPU and then go to the GPU, right? If we can
Yeah.
consolidate those things, that might be the lowest hanging fruit. And I'm not talking about an APU that's really small, right? I'm talking about just a big APU, like even bigger than the consoles. I'll just buy like a PC like that.
Mhm.
And, I don't know how long it is from now, but like, could you ever see that happening? Like, just replacing
Okay, when you describe it like
discrete
that,
consumer discrete GPUs. APUs are just that. Nvidia comes out with an APU, it's probably going to have ARM cores and then their next gen GPU all in one tile there, all made on Foveros or whatever. I don't know.
that's funny. Um, no, when you describe it like that, I could see that becoming an option in like the next 20 years.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because it's funny. We're gonna get to a point where we're actually just plugging in like computers into graphics cards. And I say that because what company was that? I think it was Minis Forum. just released a new GPU dock that their mini PCs plug into, and the performance and bandwidth is already very, very competitive with like a native desktop setup,
Okay.
if not a little bit lower in latency. So, like when you describe it like that, I think that could be an option in 20 years. I would give it a try, right? You
Yeah.
know, but it's really gotta, besides being price competitive, you've gotta like load them up. So, at minimum, I'm thinking like maybe 30 something cores at the low end, right? CPU wise. And then for your graphics portion, I don't know what they're going to be calling the SMs by that point, but right? A ton of compute units
Yeah.
to push graphics. I
Well,
think that could be viable. It's just got to be price. It's got to be price competitive.
yeah.
That's it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm thinking here. You said like 30 cores. Well, Moore's Law is Dead just came out with a video. Like he's saying Royal Core is canceled, Beast Lake's canceled, and all that. And he's saying that Pat Gelsinger said that people don't need high performance cores anymore. They just need cores on a CPU to plug their GPUs into. And 10, 20 years from now, our software stack might change so much where everything is accelerated, right? CPUs are general purpose computing. We might not need that much CPU power 10, 20 years from now. We might just need accelerators for all the programs we're running, and that could all be on an APU, right? We're going to have all these different tiles on an APU. You're going to have an NPU, GPU, who knows what other accelerators that come out with, media encoders. And the idea is you're going to have all these accelerators all centralized on one part. And oh, dang it, my mic. That looks weird. That looks so weird. Wait, hold on. Is it fixed? Yeah, it uses Wi-Fi to connect. So maybe that's why it does it. I feel like it's because it's overheating. Okay. Let me get back to what I was talking about. You're going to have like an NPU, GPU, media encoders, all these accelerators on one tile. And then you won't need that much CPU cores, in my opinion. Like CPU is just going to do all the IO and whatnot. Like that's how I see the future going. And with that, why wouldn't you want to consolidate all that within one package, right?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That's where I see the future going. And Jensen has said that. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he says we have to accelerate computing. CPUs are not growing fast enough. But what's your take?
Part of that I agree with. As far as like the packaging goes, like we're gonna have more bespoke silicon on our chips. That definitely is already happening. Because if you look at media encoders now on mobile, like I'll use my laptop again for an example. If I'm watching an offline movie, it doesn't use a CPU. It runs the movie off of the encoder.
Mm-hmm.
And so the SoC pulls like 3 watts to do that, right? So that's the future we are going to. The reason I think that CPU cores will still be needed is because software is not catching up.
Okay.
And this is something that I'm talking about, like a sneak peek in a video that I'm working on about heterogeneous architectures. So your big cores and little cores on desktop, does it matter? And we are just hitting, I don't say hitting the limits, but scheduling issues is what we're running into.
Okay.
Software has to catch up. If you have that much, again, bespoke silicon on a chip, well, some kind of layer, some kind of ISA, something there needs to be able to use it. And where we are right now, what I'm seeing right now, we don't know how to use the silicon we have.
Yeah.
Right. The Ryzen 7000 was the first client device to have an NPU, and we're now at Strix point, and there are no software besides like Windows Studio Effects that support the NPUs in these things. Right. When this laptop first came out, I was one of the first people day one to try to get the drivers working and to like expose it in Windows.
Yeah.
To, see what I can do with it. All right. Can I quantize some models? Like, how can I use the silicon in this? I couldn't, right?
Well,
AMD wasn't even ready.
Dude, this might ruffle some feathers out there, but this is what I've noticed. And AMD will be the first to come out with hardware and the last to come out with software. Or they don't get like software developers to work with their hardware teams, man. Like that's the thing that AMD's worst at. Like NVIDIA is the best at it. Intel has been okay, but who knows with them cutting all their staff how that's going to work out. But
Yeah.
AMD, they'll be the first to come out with hardware. They have these AI accelerators on their graphics cards, and they don't do anything. Like, it's been years, dude. Like,
It has.
it's been years, and you don't buy into a promise on what your hardware will do. You buy into what your hardware can do at the moment, right?
Right.
But
And it's funny you brought that up, just to not go on a tangent too much, but you said it, Nvidia, and you say what you will about Nvidia, but like their um support of software vendors is insane.
yeah,
So I was having issues with my 3090 just in Unreal Engine 5 for some reason when 5.1, 5.2 could not get things to accelerate on the GPU. Was crashing the engine. It was annoying, and I had isolated to it being an NVIDIA issue. So I reached out to their developer support, and I mean, like, they're rolling out the red carpet. Oh, let's send you another one, right? We're so sorry. Try this instead. Use this branch of our like RTX API instead of the one you have right now, and just rolling out the red carpet. That's how you retain the software support.
yeah,
Because now it's like, oh snap! When I had an issue and I reached out to NVIDIA, they made it right.
yeah.
Now we go to AMD, right? You say AMD's the worst, but it's actually Qualcomm, and I don't even
Okay.
talk about
Well, I didn't even
I'm not
consider
even talking about X Elite.
Qualcomm. Oh, you aren't?
Well,
What are
yeah,
you talking about?
well, I'm not even talking about X Elite. I mean, yeah, X Elite's bad. We saw that. I, crap, it's
Talking
kind
about
of soft NDA.
MetaQuest?
It's no. So this is
Oh,
kind of a
okay.
soft NDA, but I think I can talk about it. So well, the project I'm working on, like we were working on a Android port, and I don't know if you know what the like AYN Odin is. It's it's like it's a boutique handheld that runs Snapdragon. It's
Okay.
got like a 8 Gen 2 in it. So
No,
we're
thank you.
developing we're,
No,
so
thank you.
we're we're developing for that. Bro, you think AMD's bad? No GPU drivers, right?
Yeah.
You reach out like I've reached out to Qualcomm about like that series specifically, and people tell me like they don't even know what the chip is. Qualcomm
Yeah.
doesn't know what the chip is that they made, right? Their like game developing like software side is a joke.
Yeah.
Um, so like no drivers, no support for anything. Um, like if it breaks, the people you talk to, they don't know it. Like last time I reached out, they were like, "Oh, you know what? You should try this. Go in Windows." I'm like, "Dude, this is an ARM chip. I'm using Android. This is Android.
Yeah.
How do you not know this? You made the chip, right?
Yeah.
You made the chip." So it's funny, like you said, people think AMD's bad. No, Qualcomm is bad. And just seeing the X Elite launch pretty much cemented that for me.
Well,
Why I'm not keen to develop for the platform.
that got me thinking. GPU drivers are like something it seems like it's really, really hard to get going.
It is
And
hard. It is.
we can bring up Lunar Lake here because Intel Arc, like within under 2 years, they totally transformed these drivers. And they still aren't perfect, but I own an Arc card and it's pretty good. Like, this PC's on Arc and it works fine. Like, everything from where they started like almost 2 years ago to where they are now, that's amazing progress, right? And do you think that Lunar Lake, it's not a competitor to Strix Halo, but it might be to Strix Point, I'm not sure, based on its performance. It's going to have 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores and then 8 XE cores. But these XE cores they're expected to be 50% faster than Meteor Lake's iGPU. Do you think that this is going to entice handheld buyers at all? Because Strix Halo won't be a handheld device, like you said, but it seems like this one will be, and it's going to be going against whatever AMD has in the market at this moment. Because I think Lunar Lake comes out in like a week or two, so it's actually really close.
Okay. So you said estimates were like up to 50% better on the XE cores.
So
It's still
it has 8 XE cores, and then
8
Meteor
cores.
Lake has 8 XE cores, and it's going to be
Okay.
50% faster GPU.
50% faster.
Yeah.
Eight.
So
Oh,
Meteor Lake
eight.
was a little bit slower than like a desktop 1650, I think. Um, it might have been close to like a mobile 1650. So it'll be like 50% faster than that.
Okay.
Based on official leaks from Intel. So it's just what their numbers are. It might not be correct.
Okay. I am a little disappointed that they're not upping the XE count. I don't know why they're not. I guess
It's
they
all
really want this thing to be
efficiency.
efficient.
Yeah, that's literally, dude, they're cutting this thing has only got 4 performance cores. Like they're making this, pulling out all the stops. And I
It's
think
gonna be a
Pat
very small
Gelsing,
die.
yeah, it is. And it's all in one package. Even the RAM is on that package, so you can't upgrade the RAM. Pat Gelslinger, basically, he's trying to show that x86 can be as efficient as ARM with this thing. When he presented the chip, he basically said that he's like, we're putting to rest that myth. So I'm looking forward to see that. Like, can it actually compete with ARM efficiency? But
You there's actually two major points in that. But to go back to your first, since you asked what I think about it,
yeah,
um, I think that if the right company gets their hands on it and they tune it correctly, I do think that could be a compelling option. I don't know how compelling it'll be against Strix Point. I'm trying. I'm trying to. I'm trying to imagine that because even if the cores are 50% faster, it's
I,
not apples. It's not apples to apples. But I feel like they probably should use edge die space to just add even like 2 more cores. But besides that, I do think that um, it'll probably be 1X player. They're probably going to be the ones to ship a Lunar Lake variant. And you talk about drivers, and again, I was frustrated when Arc first came out because it was me and several others in the 1X player community when they first shipped like their first like 1X player device. It was a Tiger Lake chip, so that's the Intel
yes,
1165G7. Um, Drivers were awful on that, and us as the community, we actually got together. We got an Intel rep, and we were working through the driver issues on that platform. We
really.
were, right? Yeah, we were the ones doing it. And actually like when we get offline, I'll even prove it to you. I'll send you the Iris XC tracker we had built as a community. Crazy. So we were helping them fix their driver issues for devices that we had paid for. And it wasn't a cheap beta testing experience. Let me tell you that. So Iris XC and Arc, believe it or not, are like architecturally very similar. The
Mm-hmm.
work done for Iris XC should have transferred over to Arc. I don't understand why it didn't. Um, it was like they almost reset, and they should not have because we did a lot of work from
Yeah.
2020.
Well, and that supported DX9, right? DX11
Yeah,
natively.
that's for DX.
Yeah, so
It did,
that's
yeah.
weird that they just dropped that. I heard that Battle Mage actually might bring native support back for DX.
I hope it does.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Hope it does. And if it doesn't, then their implementation of DV or it's a
DV,
DXVK.
yeah.
Yeah, I always say it wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. That
Mhm.
needs to be like on point.
Yeah.
And but to go to the second point, what did you say? You brought up. Crap, I almost had a brain fart. You brought up, was it Lunar Lake's efficiency, the 8 cores? I talked about that. Like I said, I'm still a little
uh,
wary. I'm still a little wary on it. If I'm being honest with you, uh, it's. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I remember. Right, heterogeneous architectures. The myth that they brought up. Um, I was in the minority, but I actually agree with Intel here. And like I've done a lot of research into this. I'm not talking like me just scrolling through Google, right? I'm talking like actually sitting down
like the
with
research I
technical
do.
papers.
You calling me out, bro?
That's it. No.
All right.
Hey, sorry, man. You're much more entertaining than me. But no, I've sat down with like the research papers and crap.
Okay.
And Ar- ARM inherently is not more efficient than x86, right? And like I said, this is something I'm going to break down more in my video. But if you go beyond RISC, CISC, all this crap that people start arguing about in forums, you look at the instruction sets. People don't even know how many instructions like an x86 processor supports. They don't. When you say that, it's like, well, I don't know, like 1,000, maybe like 1,000, right? To put this in perspective, Haswell supported 2,034 instructions, right? Haswell, way
Okay.
back then. What do you know what ARM supports now? And this is mainly a rhetorical question for your community, right?
Couple
With
hundred. I don't know.
No, you're close. So base ARM, couple hundred, but then you do ARM v8 extensions, bro. You're looking at over 1,000,
Oh, okay.
right? You're looking at over 1,000. And ARM can be inefficient too. You want to talk about inefficient chips? I'm looking at you, Snapdragon 888, Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. You're talking
Yeah.
about chips that were less efficient than desktop Intel
Yeah.
processors
No, in
from
my
like
mind,
10th gen.
Snapdragon like had the worst chips until they came out the X Elite. I don't know. That was just
Right. So
always
ARM is not more inherently efficient. That's something that I always like. That's what tilts me when
yeah.
I see people say that. It's like ARM this, and they're really talking about Apple's M series,
Hmm.
which is not even base ARM. What Apple's done with the M series is like it's just about bespoke silicon,
Hmm.
right? So we have to get out of this mindset of the community and just making another cultural battleground about ARM versus x86. X86 can be super efficient. You go back to Tiger Lake, you could tune that to use like 2 watts actual work.
Is that 10th gen? Or is
11th
that
gen mobile.
11th gen mobile? Okay.
Yeah,
Man, I did
that was
not
the
care
first.
about 11th gen at all. I was like, wasn't like
Oh no, not
was
desktop,
11th gen its
not
own
desktop.
platform, like just one gen on one motherboard, or was it 10th and 11th then?
Uh, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1200. I believe that was they shared the platform 10th, 11th gen.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Like I said, I don't care about Rocket Lake at all. I
Yeah.
mean, it was such a. I don't know why they. I know they had to ship something that year, but they should have just not done it. Alder
Yeah.
Lake came out in fall. We didn't
Yeah.
need anything before that.
Yeah.
Alder Lake and Rocket Lake came out in the same year. People
Alder
forget that.
Lake, dude, Alder
It's
Lake was a banger when it came out.
dude, like
I'm
man,
just hoping Arrow
I
Lake
love
hits
Alder
like
Lake.
I hope Arrow Lake hits like Alder Lake did, you know. But with them removing hyperthreading and all that, I made a video on it. You know, the multi-threaded, it's not going to be that much better, even with the Chadmont course. But the efficiency should be way better. It should be just be like, um, we should not be seeing 400 watts anymore, basically.
No, we should.
I just kind of want to end this podcast with this. Now, my iPhone 15 Pro is up there recording, but this is my iPhone 13 Pro, and it is kind of dirty. But basically, think about this. My iPhone 15 Pro has over 2 teraflops of graphics performance, and it can play Resident Evil 7, or no, Village, Resident Evil 8 Village. Now, it can't play it the best, but just think that's an APU 10, 20 years from now. That's on a smartphone. We could be seeing APUs like with 50, teraflops. And teraflops, it's just a number. It doesn't always mean performance, but in the future, I feel like we could be seeing consolidation with that. And maybe there will be discrete graphics cards, but you won't really want to buy one because why do you need that level of performance? So
Right.
that's my thoughts.
And
Do you have anything you want to plug, like your channel, or you can comment on what I just said too?
just to comment on what you just said, I agree for the most part. I would give it 10 years, right? 10 years, we're going to see something from NVIDIA. They're going to ship on client side. That's going to blow people away, right? That's going to bring back that excitement on the platform. Like, oh my goodness, this is an APU. I'm not sure what form factor it is. I think that they're going to shoot for something on desktop. I do. Maybe start with laptop first, but in 10 years, if it's going to have something on desktop and it's going to surprise a lot of people, we're going to be
Yeah.
like, wow. I mean,
Yeah,
because NVIDIA, they just lead the way when it comes to graphics. And I
dude.
think that they could make a very compelling ARM GPU.
I always say this: Nvidia is like Intel was when they were like in the lead, but they actually didn't quit. Like they're like, oh no, we're gonna give them a
Yeah.
better product. Like they're like greedy and all that. Like they have the lead, but they're not complacent. Like they're still pushing forward, right? And
No, I'm not going to
what
rest on
what
the
what you
laurels.
just said, we could have an Nvidia APU with ARM CPU cores fabbed by Intel. I'll just end with that because that was a leak that NVIDIA may be trying to buy as an 18A, but I don't think the capacity
And
is going to be there in time, but we'll see.
maybe not there in time, but by next generation, I think they could do it. Like I said, I don't want to go too much longer. I know you probably got stuff to do, but Intel's fabs, like that is such a good business for them. They should not spin that off. They should not sell it off, get rid of
Yeah.
it. Because like you just said, right? That's a variety of different customers. And Nvidia is no stranger to using someone who's not TSMC. I mean, Ampere was done on Samsung.
They
and
don't
those
care.
were bad yields. Those
Yeah.
are bad yields. What Intel's doing at their fabs is way better than what Samsung is doing currently.
Yeah.
Right.
Samsung is just
It's night and day.
garbage.
It sucks, man. They are struggling with their 3nm right now.
Yeah.
It's bad news.
Well, they were
And I don't hear anybody
supposedly
talk about them.
they were the first to 3nm, right? But it was just horrible. Like they're like, we got here first, and they had like horrible yields that no one could buy it. So
Yeah, and same thing with 8nm for Ampere. Those yields were garbage.
yeah, and it's really just
But
a
NVIDIA
tweak
made it
10.
work.
Yeah. And that was probably that was a good decision they made because they had so much margin on Ampere back then. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on the podcast. Do you want to plug anything like your channel or whatever? I can add it in the description. And
I appreciate that very much. So you guys can find me on YouTube at the Silicon Fox. Not to piggyback off his name, it's an interesting coincidence. So I'll be going over, things a little bit more in depth, talking about heterogeneous architectures, how to really get the most out of older hardware, just keeping PC fun again. I think that's what both our goal is.
Yeah.
Let's make this fun again.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be so serious,
No.
And it's ready to fight. Breaking boundaries, no need for a separate crew. This APU's matching what a discrete can do. Strix Halo, stepping up to the game in a league